Yeah, thanks everyone who are joining online. So today we will be doing this Ask Me Anything event with all of our three amazing speakers. And meanwhile, before we start, I would like to invite you to, I think it's lagging a little bit. Let me see. So I would like to share this QR code with you all again. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask when the speakers are sharing or during the session, you may scan this QR code and then to submit and vote the questions on Slido. So I will be seeing all of your questions on my iPad, and then I will be moderating the conversation. And please also join our Discord server. All of our events and also announcements and resources will be posted on our Discord server. So I'll give you a little bit some time to scan it. Cool. Is there anyone still missing the QR code or still need it for a while? Take your time, take your time. Cool. Or you can also enter slido.com and then enter our code as well, FOFHK. Cool. Okay, I'll move to the next slide. So for friends on Zoom, please always stay muted. And if you are having any questions during the Q&A session, we'll let you unmute. So welcome everyone. Please allow me to do a really short introduction. I'm the moderator at Friends of Figma Hong Kong, Joey. Nice to meet you all. And thank you. I'm also the UX designer working at Palo IT, which is the venue sponsor of today. So thank you, Palo, for sponsoring the venue. Thanks. And just briefly going through the agenda for today is I will be doing a short introductions, and then we'll have some sharing from all of the three speakers about like their self-introduction and also their background and experiences. Then we'll jump into the Q&A session directly. Sorry. So when we're talking about UX research, I think there has been a lot of questions and concerns, or maybe you always you're battling with your speakers, or not speakers, sorry, with your stakeholders, and then saying, oh, why do we need UX research? And then how do we get their buy-ins? Or do we actually need UX research in our product design process? Or maybe sometimes you're also thinking about what does insights mean, what does findings mean, how do I make well-informed decisions on all of our design process. So that's why we have organized the event today, trying to focus the topic around the UX research. Hope that this event will help all of you to solve a little bit, to solve your little problems or questions that have been in your mind. So the next part would be, so today we'll have amazing speakers. First one is Jean. It's the senior UX researcher at OKA. So next one we have Seth, who is the lead design strategist at EPAM Continuum. Welcome. And lastly, we have Samson, who is the head of design and strategy at Palo IT HK. Cool. So for the next part, that we will start with the self-introduction from each speaker. So now for the first one, we'll have Jean. Let's welcome Jean.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jean. So I just want to kind of walk you guys through a little bit about myself. So I actually did not start my career as a UX designer or in the UX industry or even anything close to being in the design industry, right? So I'm actually a certified public accountant. I started my career as an auditor, then went into kind of financial analysis, M&A, that type of career, I would say. And then for over 6 years of my time, I didn't think it was the right field for me, and I was doing a bit of soul searching. So what is it? If it's not audit, what is it? So I kind of like keep looking and keep attending different types of workshops, and then realized that design thinking is something that I really fell in love with, and that I really truly believe in that methodology and being user-centric. So I got into UX. So after getting into UX, so before getting into UX, so what I did was I actually did a General Assembly immersive course, where I got the basics of UX, I would say, and then continuing kind of learning on the job and just learning about myself. And I landed my first job at a local agency called Arbor as a UX UI designer. Even though it's called UX UI designer, my focus was actually in research right away. Then later on, I went into a startup, just being a UX team of one, designing and researching and working with a very small team. So afterwards, then I went to a different environment, very, very different, which is a UX researcher at AIA, a big corporate environment with like different regional teams, global teams, like governance, systems, et cetera, Then now I'm at OKX, which is a global cryptocurrency exchange, being a senior UX researcher, working with product teams, being embedded into like, I would say a squad or a team, right? So that's kind of my journey within UX and outside of UX. So next slide, thank you. So I just want you guys to know that I think you guys have a lot of different questions where we can all kind of answer later on. But if you guys have particular question, I say transitioning to UX, I don't know if anybody is like new to UX, wants to transition to UX, you can definitely hit me up and ask me a lot of questions later on how to do that, or like what advice I would kind of give you guys to begin in this industry. And then what is like working in an agency versus a corporate versus a startup and versus now a product company. I can say that they're quite different. And if you want to know which is actually more suitable for you, what kind of environment is better for you, then you can also come up to me and I can explain the differences among these four options, right? And the kind of hard and soft skills that you should have as like a researcher, I can definitely share that with you guys as well. And anything that, let's say you're working on a research project, you don't know how to tackle it, or you don't know if you should go big or go small, or you don't have enough kind of budget resources, feel free to kind of like ask me those questions in the app or later on when we're just like catching up or connecting. So yeah, so that's it on my side. So now on to Zach.
Yeah. I might break everything, but in a critical mistake, I forgot how old I was and how small type can be from very far away. So I will stand over here. Hi, I'm Zach. I'm a lead design strategist at EPAM Continuum. So we are a technology consultancy. We do innovation, we do design thinking, but we also do back-end software engineering and all of that techno magical wizardry. But I'll tell you a little bit about my background and how I got to be where I am today. And it all begins when I was a 10-year-old in China, where I went on a package tour. I had never been outside of the US before, and basically came to this place, not this place particularly, but I was in Shanghai, Beijing, Xi'an, and got to see this whole new world. As I've, well, what can I do someday that's going to let me actually get to work in this sort of a place and live in this sort of a place? And so I will spare you all the details, but basically that thread wove through me starting to do research and then market research, then doing, I got a grant to study tractors, as you'll see. And then from there said, okay, I like this research thing. Could I do it professionally? And started as a consultant at an ethnographic research firm called Red Associates in Copenhagen in Denmark. And then from there realized that all of the best researchers who I had the pleasure of working with were actually people who had some kind of design skills. So they could take an idea or something abstract, something that someone told them out in reality, and they could put form to it. They could give it pixels, they could give it shape. And also, not all designers are such good collaborators. So I was like, well, if I have some kind of design degree, maybe I can both work better with designers, and then also I get to wear all black now that I have a design degree, which is really cool. So those are two good enough reasons for me to go to design school. And then right out of design school, I joined Continuum before we were acquired by EPAM, and I've been there for 7 years. So yeah, I'm jealous of your experience getting work in corporate, small consultancies, big. I've just been in one place straight on since design school. Next. So yeah, like I said, my research career started with tractors. This was in Myanmar, where I was trying to figure out how to make a supply chain to get a lot of ceramic household water filters from a little factory into a trucking depot. And these vehicles were actually the only way to do it. And when I got to talking with these folks, they told me, you know, all of these amazing things, like how they modified their vehicles, where they got these ideas to do it. These aren't the vehicles we used. These are all these modifications that folks use to drive these tractors up to a river and pump water out of it into the back, and then drive around to all these different houses and then sell the water to them during the dry season. But they just got this idea themselves, and then figured out how to make these kind of innovations. And so that led me to the next thing, which is getting a research grant to study Tuolaji, Sanunche, Nongyongche in 20 different cities across China. You can see folks doing things like they have some kaoya. They have this guy who's selling live fish out of the back of his vehicle, and general logistics. And so basically, I just wanted to study and understand how people innovated and basically got super creative with all these different vehicles. And then doing that led me to research. And no, you can go further to the next one. So basically what I do today is, as you've been sort of implying so far, sometimes it's hard to convince people to do research. Usually, I think especially in Asia Pacific markets as compared to the US, things move super fast here. And so in the US, when a lot of people have resisted doing research, they tell this favorite quote, which is great, because first off, I don't even think Henry Ford really said this. But second off, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. The beautiful thing is that's not actually research. Research isn't just asking people the things that they want. Research is going to observe and use your experience as designers, as researchers, use your intuition about the world, use your instinct, and then marry that to the things that people say that they want, but then of course, all of their unmet needs. So next slide. So the thing you probably would have recognized that Continuum has worked on in the past is this thing, the Swiffer. And the way that the original team who worked on the Swiffer got to the Swiffer wasn't saying, how should we put a piece of hydrostatic cloth on the end of a long stick? They got it through hours and hours and hours of watching people clean their homes, going to their homes, observing with them, asking them questions about every single step along the way. And it was through that process, not by saying, what is the thing you want? Because originally that project was actually to create a new kind of cleaning formula. So the client thought they were getting a spray, and it took all of our, creative energy and bargaining to be able to turn this into this kind of a product, which is arguably much better than a cleaning spray, because now it's made them many billions of dollars and made people's lives much easier. So yeah, we can go into this in much more detail later on. I don't want to spend too much more time talking, but in broad strokes, the way I like to think about it is it's not qualitative research or quantitative research. It's how do you often fuse these things together to get the very best of both elements. And oftentimes you have to get quite creative in how we manage to do that. But if you can get both, then that makes it all the better. So yeah, understanding people's motivations and behaviors up front through talking with them. And then of course, going into taking the insights that you've learned there and then zooming in more with quant and saying, what, which, how many, that sort of thing. And the other favorite thing that I've learned in how to talk about research here that hopefully some of you can take with you is don't actually call it research. One of the most effective ways to do it is to just from the very beginning talk about this as an exercise in de-risking. You're actually making it safer to move forward. Because people, of course, all love speed and they want to move fast, but they don't like the idea of wasting money or building the wrong thing. So if you constantly keep people focused on, first, we want to limit the risk of what we're doing by talking with people and asking a few people some things to discover many interesting things that pop out, right? Like, tell me about the last time you tried a new cafe. How do you feel about your current brand? Why? These long kind of explanatory things. And then jumping into a survey to sort of pressure test and validate and prove or disprove. What of these things have we heard resonate across the market, far beyond these individual insights or nuggets that we've heard from talking to these few people? What can we say is trends, and then what can we design and build for? And that's basically it. But yeah, excited to talk to all of you in more depth. This is where I post all of my various observations as I'm walking around. It's very hard to walk places with me because I always stop and take pictures and carry a massive camera with me everywhere. But yeah, go and check out squareandchancellor.com if you want to see more about what I'm about.
This was really inspiring. I did spend quite a lot of time. Sorry, that's speaking side. So please have a look. It's really inspiring. So for the next, we have Samson. Let's welcome Samson.
So first of all, maybe we can do a poll here. So who is already a researcher? Who wants to become a researcher? So for the rest, okay, let us know, okay, through the maybe the survey, so that we understand how we can answer to some of your needs. So I'm Samson. I am a lot of things, and it's kind of like embarrassing because to tell you the fact is, I started out my career hating research. I was the research person in the university, trying to do a longitudinal research for people who love Harry Potter, and we want to understand the correlation between Harry Potter, middle class, and their consumption behavior. Boring enough. Then I try to avoid that. That's why I try to do more like design. And then the more I step into the university thing, the more my boss asked me to do this and that. And at some point, I was deciding whether I should continue with my PhD study in education or not. And after studying for 2 semesters, sleeping only 1 hour per day, yeah, I succeeded in those 6 months. Okay, that's why you see why my hair are gone. So I decided I will never do something with research. And then I started doing UX design, and then shit. No, sorry. So I tried to say sometimes I need to reason my design with my boss. So I love the color. Okay, we constantly have this kind of debate. And then what is the thing that I can base on? Usually is I've already, so the first time I take the hit, okay, the boss will ask me these kind of questions, and then I don't know, according to my designer instinct, then okay, something is wrong. Then I got scolded. Okay, so is it just because of your personal preference or something? Then I learned it. Oh, I have to show it to multiple colleagues and have their feedback. So I started out again doing research. So as you see, throughout the year, I'm still very connected with university. To tell you the fact is, I didn't have any formal education, design education from any university. But I got two design courses in different universities because I believe that you can always self-taught yourself, self-teach, okay? So don't give up just because you don't have the education, and we don't need a certificate to certify how good you are in research or design. So now I'm the head of design and strategy at Palo IT Hong Kong. So I started out as the first full-time designer within the group. Now we have expanded to 60 around the world. If you want to have some international exposure, mobility, come join us. Okay, so what do we do at Palo IT? So we are digital consultancy. So this digital consultancy is different than the others because we care about the world. The tagline is tech for good. We are also working on sustainability. So if you want to understand what sustainability will actually bring impact to the future, come join us. Okay, we do it through technology development, agile, as well as design, and then we have a lot of impact assessment frameworks as well. So if you want to join us, let us know. I'm also a facilitator from this organization, which I think is very nice. Climate Fresk. It helps us to understand more about the climate effects and actions. So yeah, sorry, I'm boring. So at Palo, so we are consultancy. So people do pay money for us to do research. But how? Why? I've been convincing my boss, and he or she says, no, you don't get to have this luxury. Why? Because here we also have something similar for our clients. They would say, rather than spending your time, I know my product, I know everything, I know the users, I know the customers. You are not doing your job if you are doing something that I already know. Don't tell me my mother is a female. It's a Cantonese saying. So what we are trying to do here is, yeah, we will show them the value. We highlight value because for consultancy, we are not cheap. Okay, let's be honest. But we show enough the value. So if you look into our way of research, this is a deck that I have done only for Palo. So if you want to know more about just enough research, come join us. I will share more. I can share some, okay, in this AMA. So this is a canvas that I've created to try to help our client to understand sometimes whether their insights are really insights. So from the top, you see is a root cause. From down, you see that is superficial, and then from left to right is obvious to unknown. So usually when we are talking to the clients who said that they have done some sort of research, it's appearing here, okay, on the lower quadrants. So this is a help tool for us to map whether we are talking to some product owner or maybe product manager who actually knows what they're doing. So one time my previous boss said that if you can't name 3 pros and 3 cons about something, including yourself, you don't know that thing. Okay, so to give you a snapshot, this is the study not done by me. I'm doing desktop research as well. Say for UXers, user researchers, these are the tools, the top used tools for us to understand about our users. Whereas there are also another spectrum, people who do research. Okay, this is a very clumsy name. They will focus more on these. So whenever you are seeing these different terms in the job ad, you know how much they know about research. Okay, so next. And then because we are doing just enough research, we did it just enough time, in just enough time. We need to find out, just like what Zach has highlighted. You're not going to talk to anyone that you can randomly run into. Hong Kong, we have 7 million people, maybe less now. Okay. So we have to find the extreme users. So whenever I'm teaching in the university, I would say, don't talk about user research, extreme user research. Where do you find your extreme users? So these are some of the types. I can talk about it later. Okay, I hope that it will be useful. And then for those who are already using UX researchers, this is not done by me. Don't be amazed, okay? This is done by a guy who has analyzed the Wikipedia for all the cognitive biases. So you can scan this code. But actually, this part is done by me. Okay, I'm proud of that. Now, so this is interactive. This is an interactive SVG leading you, say, if you click onto one of each, you can go to the direct link, the page, and understand what kind of cognitive biases they're talking about. Because once I read one book about research, and that person is saying, like, for UXers, apart from empathy as a skill that we have to acquire, another part is how to recognize and how to realize that we have cognitive biases and how to avoid having these kind of biases. Because a lot of time, biases are good. Is for protecting us for evolutionary purposes, but it might sometimes obscure the way how we obtain our data or answers. Sorry, I will be quicker. Yeah. So another thing that I want to highlight here is I love this book. Okay, Philographic. You can scan this. Okay. So the more I read about this book, the more I feel like, wow. A lot of time we talk about mental models, right? What does it mean? Can anyone tell me? Yes, please.
Think about or approach things.
Yeah. Okay. So that is one approach, how users think about and how they approach things. At the end of the day, I feel like it has a lot to do with our worldview, philosophy. So that's why I think this is something I would recommend if you want to understand more. And then finally, if you feel like it is easy to add me with that one click, add me.
Thank
See you. Yeah, okay.
Thanks for the very quick and brief introduction from all of our three amazing speakers. So for now, we'll be moving to our AMA sessions directly. And we have collected quite a few questions already. So we'll start with all of those. You can also vote on the questions that resonate with you. So for those who are didn't get a chance to scan the QR code, you may now scan this QR code and then to submit all of your questions. So to begin with, the most voted questions would be, how do you define insights? And how do I self-assess and review my own insights? Like, how do I know if it's a good insight or not?
That's a good one. I guess the first thing I would do is turn it around and say, who's asking? Because an insight is usually just something that is an actionable nugget, most often informed by people that you've had a conversation with that will help you move forward on a critical decision, a product, a service, a future. But if I would take a step back even from that and saying, if someone is saying that what you're doing is or isn't an insight or is or isn't insightful, then probably they have something that they're trying to defend, or they have some sort of agenda, or they have some sort of thing that maybe you need to dig into under the surface of it and understand in more depth.
Today, 5 minutes of warm up.
I could do a 5-minute warm up.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've kind of shared the matrix just now. So the first thing maybe I will ask, why insights? Why do you need it? Try to figure out the challenge. Maybe you already have it. Maybe you might not have it. Okay, because I'm teaching the entrepreneurship course. The experience tells me that not everyone can be an entrepreneur. Why? It takes one insight in order to create something for the blue ocean strategy. Okay, to start something new. So what happened to that person? So probably that person did something different than the others. So what kind of insights has he or she seen? So maybe that is one dimension. So it depends on what you need to do, maybe with your boss or maybe with your client. Understand what the audience, because we are also doing user research, is for them, not just for the end client. It's also for the stakeholders. So understand what they need from you, what kind of insights. If we can look at the broader sense, is you have a lot of data after the research. After the data, how can you connect them? How can you make sense of them as information? After information, how can you connect them so that it becomes knowledge? Or maybe out of all the knowledge, how can you connect the most important one to form the insights? And how can you actually validate whether this insight can be a wisdom? If you look at those social media graphic, you will find this is a funnel. But whether it is an insight or not, it depends on your how you see it, your parameter. So it would be different from people to people.
I totally agree with what Samson and Zach said. But I think for me, the simpler in the day-to-day point of view, a good insight is something that creates an aha moment, like that the stakeholders, your product managers, your project managers, or designers, they've all kind of did not kind of notice that at the very beginning or ever when they're designing their product or they're developing the product. Right? So is it something that no one knows about it within the company or within the project team, and then you brought that insight to them, and then that would actually elevate the user experience because no one has ever kind of think things through that way, and then the users is telling us about that. So I think that's a good insight. Obviously, it would be better if it's like something that is kind of like that is actionable, or maybe we can think of like that are low hanging fruit type of insight, because there's some insight that are, yeah, I know it is like great insight, but it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort to develop it. How can we kind of break it down into kind of smaller bite sizes, and we can kind of enhance the experience as we kind of like develop the product. So I think that's a good, what I define a good insight would be.
Thank you. So the next question is regarding research repository. So the question is, do you keep a research repository for the team to find insights they need anytime? And how do you structure that so it's easy for the team to look at it?
Maybe I can take this one. So we are consultancy. Usually we do things not for us, not for ourselves, but for the client. So this morning I actually had this request from my client. His boss is asking for, say, can I have a snapshot of all the screens or maybe the flow about one application or product? And then lucky enough, somewhere in May, I made something, and then it saves me. I did the repository in a conference, because we are working closely with people who are using Jira, the suite, the Atlassian suite. And I have documented every research pieces, like persona, like user journey map, customer journey map, a site map, information architecture, those flows, etc., everything into one place. And I will version them. So have I answered this? I hope so.
Super impressive. For me, I think the answer is the same as when anyone asks, how often do you exercise, or are you organized? It's like, yeah, fairly, but I wish I were more. I wish I had a more disciplined approach to insights and research repositories. I will say I think a lot of the work that EPAM Continuum does means that it's more often clients are looking for something as it lives in the form of a trend. So it's something that is broadly observed across a sector of users, whether they be like travelers or people who stay at hotels, or basically people who are using any kind of service Are there more generally applicable things? Because sometimes insights can get too focused on a very specific part of a user's behavior. But it could miss all of that beautiful, messy, chaotic context that could actually be more useful in serving someone who's trying to get their brains into this new industry space in a relatively short time. So we try to refine things and land things as trends rather than going all the way into cataloging the insights at the conclusion of at least the projects that I've been on. And I will say this is also can also be a double-edged sword, because sometimes, at least as a consultant, when you're going into a new situation, the fact that the less you know about a given context actually works to your advantage, because you have the ability then to ask questions that people don't even think of to ask when you're going into a new space, because they've already jumped to all these conclusions. They already know how things work. But when you can take something and look at it from the perspective of someone who's totally new to it, but with all of your designer and research superpowers, that actually adds a lot more value than if you go in and this is like the 7th project in a row that you've done on the same particular topic.
So I am the repository of my company. Well, that's because like when I first started, I was the only kind of researcher that was dedicated into a team within a product company. So like I was the second one and someone left beforehand, but every now and then, actually I get a message, I think every other week, like, hey, Jean, have we ever done a research on ABC? Have we done, and then it was like from different people or from like different teams or even from the same people. They ask you something else, even though you have sent them the, so what I have is the research report repository. So I put all the researches in their full reports in there, and it's really nicely in a kind of like Google sheet with tags and everything like that. But people still ask me, do you have any research? So somehow either they forgot that there is such thing as the research report repository, or that they too lazy. It's much easier asking you and to find a direct link to the research that they need. So I keep getting questions after questions. So I get, now it's like, how can I make this even better, right? So I got a little helper from work who actually helped me, which hasn't been launched yet, but basically take out all the little insights and then put it into another bigger Excel sheet, kind of categorizing each kind of like into which team is about, which tag, what is it a persona thing, or is it like an onboarding thing, et cetera, right? So we haven't launched it like officially. So I'm wondering if I'll get less questions to ask me, hey, have we ever done this research or not? Or I'll still get the same amount of questions asking me where to find it. So it will be interesting to know. I'll let you guys know if I get to share, come to another event, whether it works or not, or whether repository doesn't really work because people forgot about there is such thing, or it just needs kind of more public, not education, but like advertising it. Hey, there's this thing, remember to use it, remember to go to it whenever you have questions, and basically saying, don't come to me yet unless you can't find anything within that document, right? So for now, I think report repository may not be as user-friendly because people just don't have time to go read through the whole thing and don't know where to find which like particular thing, because usually a report is very specific onto that research. They won't section it in a way where you can find a specific thing about a specific flow, right? So that's the problem. So we'll see if my more refined repository will actually allow the designers or content designers or PMs to understand the users better.
Yeah, I think sometimes it has always been a pain when you spend a lot of effort on making all of those documentation, and then you send it out and no one reads it and keep talking about it.
Yes.
Any like follow-up questions on the research repository from the floor so far? Or from the Zoom chat? If there's any, Ivan, please shout. Thank you. Cool. So let's go to let us go
Maybe
to-
one supplementary information.
Yes.
So for the conference site that I'm talking about is a wiki that can link to my Figma repository. I'm mentioning Figma.
Cool. So our next top voted question would be, please share your go-to research process when timeline is tight. And please also highlight the essential steps or methods that has served you well in your experience.
I'll start first.
Yeah.
I think my go-to is always user interviews because all of the companies that I've worked for before, they never really understand users well because research has never been a priority for a long time. I mean, it started to get important in Hong Kong and Asia, right? So interview is always my go-to. Of course, if it's more about discovery type of like discovery or trying to understand the process or understand the users, but if it's something that they have developed and they want to find out if there are any usability issues, and that's for sure, it's like a quick and dirty, maybe even less than 5 people usability test with your colleagues who have no idea about this particular function, right? So that's the most simple, quickest way of sussing out all usability issues. I would say those two are my go-tos for quick research.
Yeah, I would echo that. I
Yeah.
mean, very much the same. Yeah. Just doing whatever you can in as short a period of time as possible, but talking with anyone is almost always better than talking with no one. So yeah, just being mercenary, like friends and family. Nice, especially if you can find someone who has some sort of adjacent experience, but then again, as Jean was saying, like sometimes, again, much like, you know, that debate about whether to have a research repository or a trend repository, like sometimes ignorance is bliss. Sometimes someone knowing absolutely not, you know, which end of this interface to hold, it's like, okay, well, like right off the bat, you know, we need to bring in less experienced users in an easier way, if that's something you're trying to do. So, but yeah, you won't learn anything if you don't have some conversations with people.
So as for me, maybe my question is going back to this person, or maybe anyone. Okay, imagine you are interviewing for Palo tomorrow. You would have to fulfill the US research requirement. You only have 3 hours. What would you do? And feel free to answer if you want to. I don't want to make it rhetorical. What would you do? Maybe this person as well. Maybe let's say you only have 15 minutes. We don't have whole life. Okay, I will be patient. Who will be answering? 15 minutes, yes, please.
Maybe someone left a review on Glassdoor talking about the interview process.
Ah, yes, someone did say something bad about me. But anyway, yeah, fully transparent. Ask me anything, I will tell you anything. But it's not there, to be honest. Anyways, then it's not a matter of how much time you have. Why are you asking? You have to understand the context. If someone has already known about an issue, or maybe the purpose is not to find out more about the users, but more to start ideating. So research to me is continuous. It's happening in all the 4 stages of. If you are talking about we are talking about double diamond, it happens every stage. What kind of research are we talking about? What do we need for that product? What kind of life cycle are we at? What will create most value for us? Because we are consultancy, we have to bring the best value out of that available framework, resources, time, etc. So maybe sorry to say, but maybe I won't be able to tell you what actually my go-to, because to me, there are thousands of combinations.
So, sorry, excuse me. Is there any tools that you find, sorry.
Okay.
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 No COVID, no COVID.
Yes, Lillian.
Thank you.
So there, you mentioned about user interviews and things like that. So that's like the first stage where you collect all the data,
like there's millions of data points that you have. So what is the next step of what would you use to actually like synthesize it very quickly, like in that maybe in a short time frame?
Okay, also if you're going for rapid synthesis as much as possible. So the good thing about a tight timeline is fewer interviews means usually fewer things to have to synthesize. Yeah, and for that, it's just a lot of clustering conversations and then trying to pick out the keys. So what tool, for example, a tool that I like to lean on is one called Otter.ai, which is a transcription tool. So when you speak, it actually transcribes everything, which is very, very useful, especially if you're working on limited time, to have all of the words that somebody has already said written out for you, because that's usually the most time consuming is, writing notes or typing notes and then having to reread them. And then from there, that actually lets you sort of get a jump start on analysis. So I will say that using a tool that transcribes so that you can very easily search and see how many times someone mentioned something. I think Otter now has a new feature where it clusters the most mentioned things at the top. So that's very helpful. And I would say that these kind of conversations, insights are sort of like freshly squeezed milk, right? You want to enjoy it when it's fresh. You don't want to wait until the next day. You don't want to do 3 interviews and then do all the analysis after those because they're going to get mushed up in your brain. So I would say an important part of that is making sure that as soon as you finish the interview, you immediately just do some quick takeaways and highlights about things that stood out to you. Because also the longer you wait, the more arduous it becomes to have to do all this analysis at the very end.
What is the tool called again?
So OTTER.ai. Yep. Yeah, Otter, like the cute fuzzy animal. Holds hands with them and they're really very cute.
Any add-on speaker?
Yeah, I would agree with Zach that I always do a quick summary after every single interview, just a quick summary. What I also do is I still quite old school. I like to print out my script. Every participant had one script. And then I would circle if it's a usability test or if it's anything, I write down 2 words or a few words in my script. And I circle things or I put crosses if they can't do it or if they can't do it, just a little thing to help you if you look back. Oh, right, there's this thing that happened. It helps you with writing the summary as well, after every single participant, right? And I've done like super quick researches that I didn't even write reports, which actually something I learned maybe is not great, but I'll tell you guys about it later. A product manager wanted me to test something really quickly. They just needed it right away. And I was like, okay, go find me three colleagues that's in office. I'll do it right away. I'll take 15 minutes to write a scenario. I'll do it. You and the product designer both be in the same room with me and listen to all the insights, everything that the participant has to say. I won't write anything. I won't do any report. You guys, whatever you guys got at the end of the day, that's what you need, right? So that's what I did. But afterwards, what I realized that I should still have, which I learned, write a few bullet points after the 3 interviews, because at the end of the day, the PM is not a researcher. The PD is okay, it's fine, right? But the PM may use the what they heard, not in the best way or in the correct way, or they say they've done research, but everyone, like you mentioned, right, Samson, cognitive biases. You want to hear what you want to hear. So they take out the things, they extract that one line that one participant says, instead of synthesizing at the 3 people, like kind of point of view, right? So I learned a lesson that however short or however quick a research is, still write those 3-4 bullet points, summarizes the findings. So no one can go around and say, hey, I've done research and, user says this, and therefore we need to do this.
Yeah.
So taking whatever they want to take. So that's what I learned. Yeah.
And actually that reminds me, to build on that, right? I think a lot also depends on who you're trying to convince. Like if someone comes to you, and I mean, this cuts back to what we were talking about before with insights, right? Like if someone accuses something that you're saying of that's not being an insight, my first question would be like, wow, okay, like this person clearly, so they're trying to defend something, or it's in their best interest that this doesn't get shared. So in those cases, I mean, one thing that I like to do is there's another tool called Reduct, REDUCT. And that's a really good tool for if you're recording video of someone having an interview or a conversation. It makes it really simple to make highlight reels. And that makes it then very simple to create a user, sort of like a user supercut of all of these different people saying, like if you get 5 people in a row, even if you only talk to 5 people and they're all saying slightly different versions of the same thing, that really drives home a point, even if it's an uncomfortable point. You know, hey, it's not me saying it, it's these 5 people. The video makes a real difference. So yeah, I would say that's another tool. So that's Reduct is a good tool for that.
Maybe I can talk about one tool, Miro, or Miro, depending on where you're coming from. So yeah, it's quite handy. And then another tool that I have explored is Airtable. Because I tried one time using Airtable to do the survey as well as the journey mapping, using the Kanban view, etc. So, I'm trying out different combination to even Figma is also a good tool.
I use Figma Jam.
Yeah, Big Jam.
I use Big Jam.
I think they announced new collaborative features yesterday, so I haven't gone through it yet. Read on their latest updates as well. So since just want to echo a little bit on what Dean has shared about that little script for your interviews, because I also find it really handy to create I call that an interview download. So it's basically some of different short areas that summarize all of your research questions. And when you have that, it feels a lot more safer when you're asking questions, and you can just write down insights immediately. And talking about like how do we synthesize our insights like immediately or quickly after our interviews or research, here comes to our next question, which is asking, sometimes we might be able to synthesize insight during the interview, like when you're talking to the interviewee, you just find that thing. And shall we write it down immediately? And there's a concern that the confirmation bias may be deepened if you just write down the insights throughout the interview. So it might like bend some of your follow-up questions. I guess that's what it means from this question.
That's a good, yeah. So I would say back in the olden days, when I started doing research, when you didn't have such good transcription tech as you did now, I would actually carry 2 different colored pens, and I would be writing down every single thing that someone said. And suddenly, while they were talking, it would sort of jog my memory. If they said something like that rings a bell, I would put down my black pen and pick up my red pen and put like, oh, like participant number 3 said about lemonade or about standing in line, and try and make that connection. But yeah, it gets slippery when you move from writing verbatim everything somebody says to putting your own thoughts and words and feelings on top of that. So I try and always keep those separated. And that's part of the joy of using something like Reduct or using something like Otter. You don't have to worry at all about capturing the wrong thing. You can actually, it's like super luxurious to be able to just like sit back and be like, they're capturing all that. I'm just here totally focused on you. You'll see me occasionally write something down. And you can save that for your insights that you want to follow up with later, and be much more involved in the conversation that's happening.
I didn't create this, but I learned it from somewhere that I read. I don't remember, and I use it as well. Like if you really have to kind of type or write down. So there's 3 things. There's insight or things that or something that you're thinking, or then that will be an I. Like you just initiate as I, like insight, and observation is O. And then quote is Q. So what people are saying. So observation is like, oh, someone hesitates at this point in time. If you're doing usability tests or doing any kind of contextual inquiry kind of thing. So that will quickly kind of differentiate what is your thoughts versus what is the actual people are saying. So I do that sometimes as well. Yeah.
So on this question, so it depends on what is important to you. So if you feel like the insight is very important, if you don't write it, will you forget it? If you don't feel like you will forget it, then forget about writing it down. Sorry, I feel like I'm having some rapping or yeah, rhyming. But if you feel like, say, it is the time for you to write down something, you have to do it. Otherwise, you won't have the insights. It's good that you are aware of your own bias. So make sure you have all these thought through when you're doing the analysis. As long as it's like that, it's fine. And even sometimes, okay, I've met some researchers previously saying like, you shouldn't wear a smile while you're asking questions, or else you're going to have some false positives. Well, it depends. I don't know, maybe at some point we have to be more like human instead of machine in order to have more rapport, or should we create a rapport? I think that's a constant debate. I don't know.
Well, we are all wearing masks right now, so we don't see all of your emotions and whether you're smiling or not. Thanks for the answer. The next question is on interviewing people through interpreters or translators. So like, do you have any experience interviewing people through translators or interpreters? And do you have any advices on how to make that facilitation seamless when you're with the translator and interpreters?
Maybe I can take it just simple. I haven't got that experience. Usually we will identify people who are researchers with the mother tongue as the interviewee. Otherwise we won't do it. That's simple. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's always, I work with a good deal of translators, interpreters. I think exactly as Samson said, it makes a huge difference to find folks who have done this sort of work before. Like, I could get into the nuts and bolts of the process, but I think if you can remember just one thing, it's making sure that folks, I found that like working with fixers, people who have often worked in journalism, they tend to be much more open, at least to the projects that I used to do more frequently, which is going to a different country, finding the right people, getting up to speed, but also not with a big budget. You need someone who can be flexible and who has worked with the interview format before. You don't want it to be someone's first time doing a user interview, because a lot of people translate for, like a speech, but that's a really different experience than a back and forth rapid fire asking follow-up questions type thing. And I would say also, just one thing is also making sure you keep an eye on the time when you're doing this, because you have less time for follow-up, because basically you're having the same conversation twice the amount of time. So you have to really make sure that you don't go too far down any one rabbit hole and miss the opportunity to ask a question that comes later on. So yeah, that's just it's another fun thing for someone who has high anxiety like me, going into research conversations.
So my experience was that, yes, similarly, we always hire a local researcher who can speak and build a rapport with the actual participants. What we actually do is we also hire an interpreter for the working team. So immediately we will know whether the researcher is asking the right questions, asking usually the right follow-up questions, not just following a script, and kind of assessing. And then we always do, in the first few sessions, we always do a regroup at the end of each session, right? And a pilot testing kind of session is also very important, but this is a luxury. I know, like having like interpreters, having a local researcher, how much money is that, right? So if you're working in like a bigger corporate or really like a global kind of projects, then yes, definitely invest in them. But I think having regroups and having an interpreter, knowing exactly how the local researcher is asking the question, or vaguely know how they ask the question and then do regroup and then polish, it'll be the best way.
Thank you. The next top voted question is going back on testing. So it's asking, is it okay to test with same people multiple times? So I guess like doing a few different user testing on the same group of users. So like, what are your thoughts or opinions on these questions?
I can open it. I will say, some of the most interesting things, the more discovery, ethnographic projects that I've had the pleasure of doing have come from doing a mix. So basically having a large enough sample where you can keep a core group of maybe 5 or 6 folks who you've had longitudinal discussions with as you're thinking, as the project has evolved, as you go away, take what they have told you and come back. That really builds rapport well with them because they get to see, hopefully, if you're doing your job, how their feedback has come to life in different ways. That said, of course, you don't want to create an echo chamber where you're only getting the opinion of this small group of people. So it's important to also, bring in fresh perspective and have users who have had no prior exposure to this as well. So sort of an unsatisfying answer, but do both if you can.
So, so on this, it depends on how easy is it for you to find other users, and do you need to find other users? What is the purpose of the testing? Are you testing the same thing repeatedly? Is counterintuitive if you're doing that. But if you're doing some iterative approach, then you want to make sure like just maybe a group of champions, what we are referring to internally, maybe it's worth keeping the same people doing that because they know the context. You don't have to explain everything again and again and again. But at the same time, I like what Zach has mentioned because I did this in a 2-year-long project with a core group of people. They are super critical, so that's why it works. They will challenge you whenever things don't work. But if you have kind of like the bandwagon event, like everyone is like very harmonious. That is so nice. Then you will have problem having the same group of people because you're not seeing the reality now.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I totally agree with Zach and Simpson on that.
Okay, so out of the concern of time, we'll be taking the last 3 questions. So please type in your questions and also vote on the questions that resonate with you the most. The next one would be the questions are working with other roles. It's on how do UX researcher work with data scientists and any experience to share?
I would just say not enough. Yeah, I mean, I love it when we have the projects that let us go super cross-disciplinary. Yeah, but I wish I could work with them more.
Yeah, haven't data analysts, yes, but data scientists.
Yeah.
Less so. Yeah, data analyst is more on the on click-through rates, on funnels and things like that, but I wouldn't say data scientists would be more on the predictions and segmentation, that type of things.
And to answer this, maybe I would say I don't have enough exposure yet, but maybe I can generalize this question a little bit, make it broader. So how does a researcher work with the others? Kind of like maybe one topic like research ops. How can we make research transparent to everyone, every stakeholder, even layman? So I think it's something similar. We are all human. Some of us like more on say dealing with things daily. Some people will love dealing with people daily. Some of us will like to deal with data, historical data more. Some of us want to work on ideas. Some will love everything. So actually, it's the whole lab model. If you want to understand why I'm talking about this, so these will help us to understand how we can communicate with different people or work with different people, so that they have their own needs fulfilled. So it's not just about whether he's a data scientist, but to understand human. So one thing I think I really treasure is after being, well, a father, I learned how to become a human, and then being a user researcher, I know how human works. Okay, there is no logic sometimes. So you have to do it case by case. So data scientists, sometimes they are very nice. Then we can yeah, definitely work better together. Sometimes we will have some people who are tough to work with. Then we need to have another strategy.
Any follow-up questions on this? Okay, the next one is, what are the don'ts and no-nos as a researcher learned throughout your career? For example, like when doing a research session or during stakeholder handling, what are the don'ts or no-nos when you're being a researcher?
Oh, I can start. Don't take no as no, because we usually don't know what we are saying, what we are thinking. Usually, sometimes I will try asking the same question for 3 times. Just to validate whether maybe in a different way. So don't trust the user, because in the sense, sometimes if you really want to have real insights, you need to see beyond what they appear. Kind of like X-raying them. It takes experience to do so. I don't know how to explain it. It's a skill that I want everyone to say. We would say when we are doing facilitation, it's reading the room. It's reading your users. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really good one. I think also, I mean, this is sort of like level 101 stuff, but leading questions. That said, I think whenever you possibly can, when budget and timeline permit, getting all of the different people, be they a data scientist from your internal team, collaboration team, be they a client, if they can be inside of the interview the moment that it happens, that can raise your heart rate a bit, because especially if you're trying to serve them well, it's like, oh, like just send me any questions. You have, oftentimes they're just like, ask them why they don't like this thing so much. And you're just like, yeah, well, we'll make sure we have time at the end to ask that. I'm in my head, I'm like, how are we going to get out of this one? But I would say, bring in the people who you think will ask leading questions, like your clients and your colleagues who are invested in a particular feature, because they're most often the ones who really need to hear it, again, directly from the source, directly from these original conversations of people expressing themselves sincerely about the thing that they have a strong preformed opinion about this person.
Yeah, great. So for me, I think too is like, don't jump into conclusion too soon, and actually don't be too talkative, but that's within the research session. Enjoy the silence, because be a good listener. Essentially what I'm trying to say is that a lot of times we're very prone to filling the gap, like filling just awkward silences. And then the more you talk, the less the participant will talk, because you are stealing the show essentially, right? So sometimes they just need a little bit of time, or all you need to say is kind of, there's some techniques in research that you can read about, is repeating what they say. And they might start saying more or say the last word that they say. So these things is just try to avoid, like I'm learning every single time when I do research as well, to try to avoid to jump into another question soon. I'm still learning by day, but I do think that's very important skill that we should have as a researcher, or whoever goes and talk to people, not even being researcher, just being a good friend.
Totally.
Right, so yeah, so that's don't be too talkative.
Yeah, exactly. To build on that, at the risk of being too talkative, there's a book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. On the face of it, it's about negotiating, which is also just useful for a whole bunch of other things. Like, if you want something from your boss, from a client, from anyone, incredibly useful insight. Or you could just you just do Chris Voss and listen to any podcast he's in. But mirroring, right, like repeating the last few words that someone has said, is a great way to keep pulling them through and get them to elaborate, on things. Yes, as my grandma liked to say, you have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. So
Yes.
use them in that ratio.
Yeah.
You should be listening and looking much more than you are speaking in a user interview.
That's a
Lovely.
yeah, that's a wisdom from grandma. Yeah.
Yes, smart thinking.
So here comes to, I think it will be the last question in our session today. How do you do research when the user base is very specific and hard to reach? And how can you still get insights? If there's anyone asking these questions here, maybe you can also follow up a little bit. Or any.
So yeah, it was me.
Nice.
Yes, because in my case, in my company, so it's very hard for us to access those users. And even the salesperson are kind of keeping a barrier for that, for us not to reach out to them. Maybe they are scared that designer might ask weird questions, I don't know. But it's very hard for us to get access to those. So I was wondering if there are any tools or things that could be recommended in this situation. Or how would you do yourself if that was the case?
Yeah, I had experience like that. Okay, so in one project, we were talking to people who are very busy and who are earning a lot more than we can imagine, like in billions. Okay, so somehow I think you're not going to change the process, or you're not going to change the tool. You have to change the connection, the connector between you and the user. If that person is influential enough, you will gain access to them. So most of these people, they are like CFO, CTO, or maybe management, asset managers. So they won't give you time if you don't see the need in that. So usually what they will be doing is like, I will give you just 50 minutes or maybe 30 minutes for the window, but actually they have blocked their time for 1 hour. If it is interesting for them, they will continue with the conversation. So luckily, usually we use up all the time. We did it with some 12 to 20, I forgot the exact number. So if you can identify the number of users, they are quite finite. And if you can get to their circle, then definitely they are already experienced users. But out of those who can actually give you more insights, you have to figure it out. The connector is key.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a really good, and I would say it also depends, I'm happy to chat more about this afterwards. It depends on, are they tough from a numbers perspective or tough from an access perspective? But yeah, I would say to build on that, make it a good experience so that you can sort of snowball off of these conversations. Like, it's like, oh, this was a really great conversation. I would love, if you could introduce me to anyone else who you think I would be useful to have this conversation with. And if you made it an enjoyable research conversation, then they will want to, especially people that have a lot of resources, they want to flex. So they will say like, oh yeah, I had this very interesting person called me and asked me all these questions. Do you want to talk to them as well? Yeah, I wish I had a better answer besides like a lot of times it's just throwing resources at it through very talented, persistent market research recruiters. And then just, trying to squeeze as many insights out of a short conversation as possible.
I unfortunately have never encountered that niche group of people, but I would imagine if I do encounter, like on top of my head, I think the first thing I might ask is try to get as much information from the salespeople or whoever that's closest to those clients, right? They should know quite a bit. Maybe they have some biases for sure, but they should hear a lot of things from their clients, what the complaints are, what they need, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's something that you can do first to at least get somewhat understanding. Maybe you're doing that already, right? So, and another thing is, can you try to negotiate and let you follow them for, like, I won't say anything. You just say that I'm your intern or like little helper or whatever. And then observe the conversation and just listen in and see if you find anything useful. and build the trust with the salesperson as well. Maybe once you get the trust from the sales guy, maybe he'll be like, oh, this client's quite nice. Maybe you can kind of have 10 minutes to have a quick chat with him. I think I would do that if I were you.
Yeah, so yeah, it's like building a trust with that sort of hub connector
Yeah.
person, and that can unlock all these other things. And also to even bring in a strand of what you suggested, if you can somehow prove value to these hubs, these connectors, whether that's through third-party research, whether that's through telling them something surprising, whether that's through reading reviews of their product or service and then saying it back to this connector person in a novel way, that shows that you're actually on the same team and you want the same outcome, which is making a better product or a better service or a better offering. Then that can be another way to unlock conversations.
Thank you for your sharing, and I think it's a short wrap up over here on the AMA part. And thanks all of these amazing speakers sharing all of their experiences and stories. So later on, for now, we'll have a quick update on what's happening next in Friends of Figma Hong Kong, and then we'll also do a lucky draw and take a group photo. So please stay with us. Oh, let me get back to. So regarding the happenings in October, we are having our October Design Challenge on our Discord. And on the side is our survey, which is served as our report card for the past year, because we started in April and it has been almost a year. So we would also like to collect some feedbacks from all of you, and then please spend your valuable 8 to 10 minutes to fill in the survey to give us a little bit feedback. And regarding the upcoming events in the November, so on the 16th of November, there will be Schema, which is Figma's Design System Conference, so you can join it online, and it will start around nighttime. And on upcoming on 25th or 26th, we haven't decided on it yet. There will be our winter holiday party, and there will be more details to come. And if you are interested in joining and learn more about all of these events, please join our Discord server. And I think that's it. And now we will have Michelle coming here to help us to do our lucky draw.
So can I get a big round of applause for you? My name is Michelle. I'm one of the organizers of Friends of Figma Hong Kong, along with Joey, Samuel back there, and Arthur in the back. But we're the main group of people who put together all of these events. So that survey is really helpful for us. So we know, so we can start planning for next year as well. If you're interested in getting more involved in planning, let any one of us know, and we could get you more involved as well. So we have a lucky draw. So I have some very cool Figma merch here. And our end of the year party, which is end of November, I'll have a lot more of those, so definitely. But can I ask Joey and each of our speakers, take somebody from the back and then.
Yeah, I'll take these.
Let me also grab one. So we can start announcing.
So Jane, who did you pick?
Sorry. Dun, 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 dun.
Wait, who's first?
Jane.
Mac.
Max, congratulations.
Oh,
yeah.
Not ready yet.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
That's a really.
Okay, for this lovely pair of men's size 6 through 12, women's size 7 through 13. It is Jenny. We're gonna. It's just- it's not good.
Thank you. Samson.
So before this turn into A, So it's Sandy.
Sandy.
One pin already.
Oh, you have a pin already? You wanna pick somebody else then?
Okay.
I'll give you something, I'll give you something else. Thank you.
Maybe I'll do take a quick photo together as.
Oh.
Okay. Just for the record.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, one more, 1, 2.
Okay, so
Thank you.
this is your token.
Okay.
Drawing.
Yeah, just draw somebody else.
Yeah, okay. Oh, you can draw another one.
Okay. Just making sure I'm not biased. Okay, so this time we have Jason.
Jason. Nice.
And mine is Maine.
Nice. Those stickers are very welcome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. Everyone, should we like arrange ourselves here for?
Yeah, I think maybe like the speakers, we can move to here and then let me ask
Okay.
someone to help us with. I think maybe we can squeeze a little bit toward that side then.
That's right.
I'll let them-
Do some remodeling.
Take your time.
I would design a chair.
So for the people who are joining online, the session will end here because later on we'll have the mingling session. Thanks everyone for coming. Thank you. We'll be sharing the slides later on.
ทำไมก้อยทันกว่าเพียง
Can we squeeze into the middle a little bit?
Remodeling. We can be like.
I think for Leo and Jason, maybe. The middle.
Look, we have a perfect quality control right here. Everyone.
Let me take more.